morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get started with our Tuesday, July 16, 2019 council session. We will begin the session with an invocation by Imam Chad Earl from the Islamic Center of Maryland. Please stand if you're able.
Thank you. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for the blessing to be here this morning in the service of your servants, in the service of your creation, in the service of the city. Dear God, we ask you to bless us and to bless this council and to bless the people of the city and this county. Dear God, we thank you for the blessings upon us, the blessings of health and friendship and our diversity, which is the source of our strength and not a source of our weakness. Dear God, we thank you for all the blessings which you have given us, and we ask you to continue those blessings so that we may better serve your servants and your creation. We thank you and praise you. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we have three presentations. We will begin with a proclamation recognizing Peace Day by Council Vice President Katz.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you. If I could ask Jenny Stepanek and anyone who's with her, I don't know whether would you like to come up, or I know somebody's a photographer here, so I don't know for sure who's coming, but you know, on Saturday was really, always like to say that every day in Montgomery County is a special day, and it truly is. We have to appreciate that, and Iman, it's good seeing you as well. But Saturday was Peace Day in Rockville, and it was named for Maddie Stepanek, Jenny's son. And the other proclamation I'm giving is to a young lady who actually saved a person's life. She's a lifeguard that actually saved a person's life. So Montgomery County is blessed in many, many ways, but today especially. It's always a great pleasure to welcome Jenny and to the chambers. Peace Day celebrates the extraordinary life of Maddie Stepanek and Jenny's son, obviously, and there's a park named for him in Rockville, and rightfully so. Many of us remember that Maddie was a very special friend of Oprah Winfrey, and when they dedicated the park to Maddie, Oprah Winfrey actually came to Rockville to be a part of that celebration to show what type of friendship they had. The annual event is an opportunity for all of us to reflect on the importance of the lessons that we learned from Maddie, and I know that Jenny's going to touch on a few of those today as well. This year marks a significant milestone in the evolution of Peace Day, as there's a documentary currently in production to bring Maddie's message to so many more people. And with that, I'm going to ask Jenny if she'd like to say a few words.
So the annual Peace Day event is a celebration of what should matter to all of us and what clearly does matter in the city of Rockville and Montgomery County and the state of Maryland. I commend you all as leaders for becoming role models as you fill your role as a civil servant for children and families. I also want to thank the Imam for the beautiful words. It was almost like we conferred and planned this opening prayer because it was beautiful. Maddie did not live a long life, but he lived a life of depth filled with purpose, and that purpose was and is peace. It's about believing that peace is possible through personal choices in our attitudes and habits. It's about tending to basic human needs so that each of us can say, I'm okay. And then once we say, I'm okay, it's about then looking at our neighbors and tending to their basic human needs so that they can also choose to be okay. It's about getting to know our neighbors so that despite differences or disagreements, we can celebrate life together, which doesn't mean that we have to be like others. It doesn't mean we have to like others. It doesn't mean we have to agree with others. It means we have to just learn to be with others in a non-judgmental and nonviolent and respectful, supportive way. Maddie reminded us that we are a mosaic of gifts, that we have within us things to offer, and that every person has something that we should also be accepting. So that's what Peace Day is about. It's not about pausing violence for 24 hours and going, hail peace. It's about tending to that mosaic that's been shattered by personal choices and global choices. It's about shifting and shaping those treasured bits, old and new, bright and broken, and rediscovering our common bonds of humanity. Maddie's Peace Day, these proclamations from city, county, states, organizations, is part of a national campaign. We want a presidential proclamation saying July 17th is Peace Day, to become a source of peace and to consider how people diverse in age and ability and aspiration can become a source of peace for our world. Next year, 2020, Peace Day is going back to Maddie's Park. We love celebrating in the city streets, but we've now grown big enough that it's an entity, and we have you all to thank for that. So we're going to bring the restaurants and businesses to the park. We're going to go back to the park. So we're really there with Maddie's statue, and I'm challenging the county council and the city council in the state of Maryland to begin considering this now and planning how you will be a part of the recreation, the conversation, the education, because together as children and leaders and everybody in between, we need to choose to gather as a community and ultimately and emphatically make peace the news and move closer to National Peace Day. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. She deserves a round of applause. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Jackie Zamora. I am actually on the board. I'm also a founder of a dance fitness program for children and adults with intellectual differences. I definitely am, it's a blessing to be next to Jenny Stepanek. She has changed my life completely, and I am definitely promoting peace as well through dance, helping children and adults with intellectual differences. So thank you for this opportunity. It's beautiful.
And the man behind the camera out there is also one of our board members now. We brought him on. We've too many talents to lose. That's Mark Birnbach, who is the lead executive producer for the I Am a Mosaic of Maddie documentary.
Thank you very much. You realize that they do call Jenny Mama Peace as well, so it's for good reason. But we do have a proclamation. Whereas Maddie J.T. Stepanek, born on July 17, 1990, was an American poet, ambassador of goodwill, an advocate for peace, all while living with a debilitating genetic neuromuscular disease that ultimately took his life on June 22, 2004, just before his 14th birthday. And whereas by the age of 3, Maddie began celebrating hope and happiness by creating poetry he referred to as heart songs, which are expressions of inner purpose that connect humanity in positive ways, and whereas Maddie spent his life inspiring millions of diverse global neighbors with his vision and mission of hope and peace, sharing it on television, in speeches, and in 7 award-winning New York Times best-selling books of poetry and peace essays, while grieving the loss of his 3 siblings and facing his own health challenges. And whereas Maddie believed that peace is possible, peace is for all people, peace can be taught, and peace begins with deliberate choices in attitude and action, reminding us that we are a mosaic of gifts, and to remember to play after every storm. And Maddie encouraged us to understand that peace is not about having to agree with our neighbors, but choosing to be with our neighbors in nonviolent and non-judgmental ways, promoting respect and kindness. And whereas to recognize and honor Maddie's contributions in 2014, a congressional resolution was passed to support the Maddie J.T. Stepanek Foundation's National Peace Day campaign to have Maddie's birthday annually proclaimed as a day to learn about and celebrate peace. And whereas to commemorate his life and legacy, a 26-acre namesake park and playground with a statue and peace garden was created in 2008 in his King Farm neighborhood. And the city of Rockville collaborates with Maddie's Foundation to annually celebrate Maddie's Peace Day. And this year, a documentary will be produced to chronicle the life and legacy of Maddie Stepanek. Now therefore it be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby proclaims July 16, 2019 as Peace Day in honor of Maddie J.T. Stepanik's life and legacy of peace, which continues to gently shape our world with hope and goodwill. And it's presented today, and it's signed by me and the County Council President, Nancy Navarro. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can my colleagues please join me for a picture? This is not, is this one? Yeah. Could I invite Marissa Arnold to please come and join us? And I've asked Councilmember Albornoz to stay here as well. He's the former director of the Recreation Department, and he has a little bit to say about water safety as also. But this is a proclamation, and her parents, please, if you please come on down. I should have done that. That's why I have a great staff. They remind me of things that I should have remembered anyhow. We're honored today to welcome Marissa Arnold, who's a recent graduate of Quincy Orchard High School, and her family, to present her with the proclamation. Marissa reacted quickly and professionally during an extremely stressful situation. A child's life was saved due to her lifeguarding skills. Other community pools are already discussing this and using her as the perfect example. What happened, and using Marissa as the example of what to do when a child is in distress. It's always important to remain vigilant when young children are playing in or near a pool, and we're going to ask an expert on water safety to please comment further.
Thank you, Vice President Katz. I want to commend you, Marissa, for your heroism, for your quick thinking, obviously the training that you took part of, and so thank you for your leadership. And as the father of two young girls, congratulations to your parents as well. You've raised a remarkable daughter. I didn't want to miss this opportunity to reinforce the importance of water safety across our community. Drowning is the leading cause of death of children across this country under the age of 12. And drowning can occur in 45 seconds or less because of the panic that occurs even for children who are proficient at swimming. And so, as the Council Vice President said, we have to remain diligent as parents and as caregivers when children, particularly of younger ages, are in the pool, not be on our phones, be concentrating, and ideally be in the water with them as they are experiencing and having a good time. So this is a message that we have to continue to send home. It's also important for children to take breaks when they are at the pool to rest and then come back to the pool. And so taking all of that into account, we can ensure a safe summer for all of our residents and for many years to come. But this day is about Marissa and her great actions, and thank you all very much for the opportunity to speak a few words.
Would you like to say a few words? No? She only saves lives. She won't say a few words. We're going to read this proclamation. This is it's a proclamation. Whereas Marissa Arnold, a lifeguard at Stone Ridge Community Pool and Tennis in Gaithersburg, and a recent graduate of Quincy Orchard High School, was performing her duties working as a lifeguard on June 24th at 1:30 p.m. and
whereas, as she monitored pool activities, she noticed a young child diving in and out of the water to retrieve toys and witnessed that the child was in distress and underwater. And whereas, when the child was pulled out of the water, Miss Arnold noticed that the child was purple and immediately yelled to other lifeguards to call 911 and to bring her a breathing mask and a shock defibrillator while she started CPR. And whereas,
the child's color returned to normal after about 30 compressions, and Ms. Arnold stayed with the child until Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service arrived. And whereas Ms. Arnold maintained her composure in light of very serious circumstances, and her quick action saved the life of a 4-year-old child. Now therefore it be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby honors Marissa Arnold for saving the life of a 4-year-old child. It's presented today, signed by me and the Council President, Nancy Navarro. Congratulations, Marissa. And I think my colleagues...
All right, so our next proclamation recognizes the anniversary of the open housing law in Montgomery County, and it's presented by Councilmember Jawando on behalf of Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you, Council President. If I could have Jim Stowe, our Director of Human Rights Commission, join me, and I don't know if anyone else is here for the fair housing. Okay, I know we got DHCA here. I didn't know, I didn't know if they wanted to join us. So in 1961, when the Zalco headquarters at 8701 Georgia Avenue was completed, and that building's still there, I think a lot of people know it, one of its first tenants was the U.S. Department of Labor. When the agency moved from Washington, D.C. to Silver Spring, 130 African-American employees were included in the more than 600 workers who were relocated. At that time, there was no law requiring businesses to serve African-Americans. African-Americans couldn't eat in most of the restaurants in Silver Spring. They couldn't shop in most of the stores. And because of racialized land use policies, they couldn't live in Silver Spring. Employees at 8701 Georgia Avenue protested the lack of public accommodations in Silver Spring. They began picketing businesses that discriminated and ultimately filed civil rights complaints. Their efforts gave way to a grueling but ultimately successful campaign against housing discrimination in Montgomery County. In January 1967, the Montgomery County Human Rights Commission, which Director Stowe has done a great job as director, and you'll hear from him in a moment, voted to submit draft fair housing legislation to the Montgomery County Council. And in July 1967, the County Council passed the Open Housing Law, which we celebrate today. The Montgomery County Open Housing Law passed almost a full year before the Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968. So Montgomery County ahead of the curve as usual. In presenting this proclamation today, we recognize the work of the past and continued efforts to make Montgomery County a community where all of our residents have the opportunity to live, work, play, and thrive. I want to give our Human Rights Director, Jim Stowe, an opportunity to say a few words before I read the proclamation.
Thank you so much, Councilman Jawando, and to Council President, members of Council. Thank you for this opportunity, and also Councilmember Reamer in his absence. We committed last year, as part of the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act involving housing last year, and also the 51st anniversary for our law here in Montgomery County, that we would every year take time out then to say to all of us who live in Montgomery County that in our county, everyone has the right to live where he or she can afford to live in our great community, without regard of race and many other factors of their uniqueness. And so we are continuing that pledge. So thank you again for allowing us to have this happen again this time and this time around. Folks, again, it is right and decent that every person has the opportunity to live and to flourish in Montgomery County. But it starts first and foremost in where they live and their opportunity to do so in peaceful kinds of ways. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Stowe, and I will read this proclamation. Whereas on January 30th, 1967, the Human Rights Commission voted to submit draft fair housing legislation to the Montgomery County Council, and whereas after 5 nights of public hearings and demonstrations by supporters, the Montgomery County Council passed the open housing law on July 20th, 1967, nearly a full year before President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Federal Fair Housing Act into law on April 11th, 1968. And whereas the open housing law prohibited discrimination in the sale or rental of virtually all housing except owner-occupied housing of 2 rented units or less, and whereas the open housing law significantly advanced the civil rights movement by establishing equal opportunity housing for county residents and recognized one of the broadest, and represented rather, one of the broadest laws in the nation. And whereas the open housing law resulted from the hard work of dedicated residents and county civil rights leaders committed to addressing discrimination in housing and ensuring that all Montgomery County residents have equal access to housing. And whereas the Montgomery County Office of Human Rights enforces the current fair housing law, which prohibits discrimination in both residential and commercial real estate on the basis of race, color, religious creed, ancestry, national origin, sex, marital status, physical or mental disability, presence of children, sexual orientation, age, source of income, or gender identity, to ensure that potential renters and buyers are treated consistently and fairly under the law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby recognizes the 52nd anniversary of the Fair Housing Law in Montgomery County, presented on this day, the 16th of July, by myself and Council President Navarro, and obviously Councilmember Reamer in his absence. Congratulations, and we look forward to celebrating 53 years.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, now we're on to general business. Let's see, do we have any announcements, Ms. LaMarcy?
Yes, the council has received 2 petitions this past week. One petition was signed by 20 persons who were supporting the removal of the rainbow flag in Veterans Plaza in Montgomery County. A second petition was received, signed by 1,032 persons who are residents of Montgomery County, supporting passage of Bill 1419, the Police Advisory Commission established. There are no other calendar changes today.
Thank you. I also need to announce that Councilmember Rice and Councilmember Glass are both representing us at NACO conference, so that's why they're not here today, doing great work over there. All right, so let's see. We have distributed the minutes of June 18th and 25th, also June 18th, 25th, and 27th for our closed session minutes. Are there any modifications? Hearing none, those stand adopted. All right, so now we're on to consent calendar. I need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Vice President Katz, seconded by Councilmember Friedson. Okay. Don't see any lights, so all those in favor of adopting the consent calendar, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous among those present. All right, now on to item 3. We have an action to confirm County Executive's appointee for the Office of Management and Budget Deputy Director for results, Ms. Jennifer Bryant. Councilmember Albornoz.
I'd like to move that we approve Ms. Bryant for this important position as Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget.
All right, so moved by Councilmember Albornoz and seconded by Councilmember Jawando. All right, any discussion or any further comments? We had an amazing interview with Ms. Bryant, and she's well known to all of us. So I think that we've been able to express all of our appreciation for your service and how much we think highly of you in this new position as well. So all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous among those present. Congratulations. We'll keep your phone number very handy.
If they haven't already.
All right, now we're on to item number 4. This is introduction of bills. We have 4A, it's Bill 22-19, accessory dwelling units, licensing, requirements and amendments. The lead sponsors are Councilmember Reamer, Fritzen, Jawando, and Navarro, and a public hearing is scheduled for September 10th, 2019 at 1:30 p.m. We also, let's see, Councilmember Hucker, do you have a question on this or a comment on this one? No. Okay. So we also have 4B, which is Bill 23-19, Cybersecurity Investment Incentive Tax Credit Supplement Amendments. The lead sponsor is Councilmember Reamer, Fritzen, and Jawando. Public hearing is scheduled for September 10th, 2019 at 1:30 p.m. And then we have Bill 24-19, Landlord-Tenant Relations Obligations. I'm sorry, Councilmember Fritzen, you did have the light on for that one? Go right ahead.
Yeah, just quickly explain, this is the tax credit. This is a committee bill, I thought, and basically all this does is put us, the county has a tax credit, the state has a tax credit. The state changed the bio tax credit to allow for investors in addition to biohealth companies, and we are just conforming to the state so that we can match the state tax credit. It's just in keeping with what we have been doing and part of our commitment to focus on increasing risk capital, focus on our strength in biohealth and biotechnology in Montgomery County, and it's a good one. The other bill we talked about at length last week, so I won't go into too much detail, but the basic idea of this is to make sure that we match the, or as Councilmember Jawando would say, we put the trains on the same track, but this is the legislative changes that accompany the zoning text changes related to accessory dwelling units. Thank you.
Councilmember Albornoz, are you on those as well?
I'd like to be listed as a sponsor of Bill 2219.
Okay, excellent. All right, so Bill 24-19, Landlord-Tenant Relations, Obligations of Landlord Air Conditioning. The lead sponsor is Councilmember Hucker, co-sponsor Councilmember Jawando. Public hearing is scheduled for September 10th, 2019 at 1:30 p.m. Councilmember Hucker.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, we just completed the hottest June in recorded history. July is expected to be the hottest July in recorded history. Today will be the 5th day in a row over 90 degrees, and the next 6 days are expected to be over 90 degrees as well. But Montgomery County's growing population of 300,000 tenants lack any protection in law that their unit include working air conditioning. We require landlords to provide heat, but we do not require air conditioning. I learned this at a Fed committee meeting, and it's time that we should. Maryland has already had a heat-related death this summer. Unfortunately, we may have more ahead of us. The hottest weather is in front of us still, and this bill simply requires working AC in every rental unit in Montgomery County. It's complementary to our requirement for heating. It's completely consistent with the legislation we recently passed allowing tenants who are facing persistent health and safety issues to terminate their leases. Like mold and vermin and smoke and broken smoke detectors, extreme heat is a health and safety issue, and we should protect our tenants from that as well. Just this morning, I had my third call with a tenant in Montgomery County who's 80 years old, who does not have working air conditioning, who is in the habit of freezing water bottles in her freezer and then letting them just sit on her lap to keep her temperature down during the day. That shouldn't be happening in 2019 in Montgomery County. So that's the point of this bill, and I welcome your support. Thank you.
Councilmember Albornoz.
I'd like to be listed as a co-sponsor of this bill as well, and I think especially in light of the fastest growing demographic in our community being senior citizens, but also children being extraordinarily vulnerable to extreme weather conditions, I think this bill makes sense, and obviously we'll deliberate the points of it, and but I think in principle it's a good thing for us to do. Very good thing for us to do.
Councilmember Joando.
Thank you, Council President. I want to commend Councilmember Hucker and thank him for introducing it. I was proud to co-sponsor it. We heard at the same time and looked at each other in shock at the Fed committee that we didn't have this protection to go along with our heating protection. And I also want to just commend the great folks at DHCA who said that, hey, this is something we need in the toolbox to make sure we keep our residents safe. So I want to thank them for their work, and I look forward to taking this up in committee, and it really makes sense. So thank you, Councilmember Hucker.
Thank you, and I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor as well. Okay, so with that, we are now on to item number 5. This is call of bills for final reading. We have one bill, expedited bill 9-19, Consolidated Retiree Health Benefits Trust Delegation of Duties, and the GO Committee recommends enactment. Basically, this bill was introduced by myself at the request of the Board of Trustees for the Consolidated Retiree Health Benefits Trust. It was introduced on April 2nd, 2019, and we had a public hearing on April 30th with one speaker, which was Ms. Linda Herman. She testified on behalf of the Board of Trustees. The GO Committee did hold one session on June 20th. The bill will allow the Board of Trustees to delegate certain duties as set forth in its written policies. The bill will permit the Board to delegate duties if it deems appropriate and consistent with its fiduciary duties, and it would better align the roles and responsibilities of the Board and its staff in the oversight of the investment program and further enhance the efficiency of the operation of the program. The goal of the bill is to provide the Board with the necessary authority to meet its fiduciary duties in overseeing the investment program in an appropriate manner. Basically, we did have that work session, and Ms. Linda Herman, who is here today, was present in order to explain the potential benefits of the Board of delegating the selection of investment managers to staff and concentrating on broader policy issues such as asset allocations. We felt that this would be a good change, and therefore the committee recommended 3-0 to approve the bill as introduced. And Mr. Drummer prepared the packet and was there to also answer questions, but he recommended that we adopt the bill as introduced. And I want to thank my colleagues, Councilmember Friedson and Katz, for their participation and deliberation. So that is before you. I don't see any lights, so it's a roll call.
Mr. Joando?
Yes.
Mr. Joando votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Mr. Albernas?
Yes.
Mr. Albernas votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes. All right, so that is unanimous among those present, and it passes. Thank you, Ms. Herman. Okay. All right, now we're on to item number 6, and this is an interview for County Executive's appointee, Department of Human Resources, for its director, Mr. Berkey Attila. Good morning. Okay. Oh, I have it here. All right, well, let's see. Mr. Klein, would you like to make any remarks before we get started in our conversation?
Good morning, Council President Navarro, members of the Council. I'm Andrew Klein, Chief Administrative Officer. I'm delighted to be here this morning to introduce Berkey Attila, our nominee for the Director of the Office of Human Resources. And just want to say a few words about this nomination. So when I arrived and was talked to department heads and others about how do we get better results, the most common frustrations I heard were around human capital, recruiting and hiring talent, training and developing employees, reviewing and rewarding employees, those kinds of things. And so, I knew in hiring a director of OHR, I needed someone who could come in and challenge the status quo. And I interviewed a lot of traditional candidates, and I was not finding the change agent that I thought we desperately need. So the county executive and I agreed that we should look for an unconventional candidate, someone who could bring a new perspective, a customer perspective to this role. And I thought it was important that it be someone who I know and trust. So I turned to Berkey. I hired Berkey from the private sector into the public sector 8 years ago. And when it comes to using data to solve problems, retooling business processes, innovating, I've never worked with anyone better than Bear K. The OHR is a team of highly experienced professionals, but any team can get stuck in old ways of doing business and need a spark to get to the next level. And I'm very confident that Bear K can be that spark for OHR and also a positive force for change and innovation across county government. So I commend him to you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam President and the members of the Council. I'd like to try to give you a brief background on my personal and professional life. I'm a Turkish immigrant. I was born and raised in Istanbul, Turkey. I'm a trained engineer, material science, and I started my professional journey as a production engineer working for Ford Motor Company in Istanbul, Turkey. One of my very first tasks was to learn how the competition is about to beat Ford Motor Company, which was the Toyota, and Toyota production systems and Six Sigma and lean production was my task to learn and implement, and that's when I started my critical analytical thinking. I remember a very clear day working on the production plant floor, wearing my white coat and a hard hat, and I looking up the second floor, seeing some sharply dressed people looking down on us, and in an AC'd room, and I asked my coworker, who are these people? And the answer was, they are the businessmen and women. And how do I get there? And then the answer was, you need to get yourself a business degree. It was clear from that point on for me that if I'm going to get a business degree, it had to be in the United States. So I started applying for grad schools, got accepted from a few of them, ended up choosing Baltimore City. Do not ask me why, but it is mainly due to getting a half scholarship at the start of the first semester and a full ride for the remainder of the grad school, and it's a huge savings for an international student coming and not having to pay those tuition fees was the main reason behind why I chose Baltimore. Upon graduating from University of Baltimore MBA, I was literally very lucky enough to be finding a job in a small business that is willing to provide and support the work permits and through the green card process. So I worked in that small business, and over the 6 years, I really helped the small business to expose their business to outside of Maryland, into Virginia, to Puerto Rico, and eventually to Dominican Republic. But one thing that it didn't quite sit well with me working for private, which was the revenue-driven aspect of the private sector wasn't really fitting well. When I had the opportunity to join Andrew's team with the City of Baltimore, I took the leap, and to be honest with you, I've never looked back since then. During my time in the City of Baltimore, I worked as a budget management analyst, and then I was able to get hired to Department of Public Works as their deputy CFO and their rate manager. And finally, in 2014, I was hired to be the CFO for the Department of General Services, and I might refer it as DGS during the interview. First thing that I asked my director was, I just didn't want to be a regular CFO. I wanted to have more influence in the operations and how we do business. And I changed the office from the office of the CFO to Office of Strategic Management and Financial Planning and Strategic Management. We created a financial planning and analysis arm, as well as a business process improvement unit within my division. And we knew that we needed to attack two things right away. One is human capital. The second one is also related to human capital, the business processes, because I'm a true believer of if something is not producing well or working well, it's most of the time, if not all of the time, is the process, not the people. So for me, it was very important to have a diversified background of team and leadership and frontline people that are trained and understanding how they can really identify waste in their own work and empowered to be able to make the change, and then I was there to support them. It has been quite successful. A couple of the initiatives that we have done around human capital was tapping into the local ecosystem. I know that other cities and other county governments and outside of the United States, most of the local governments that have been very successful when they really utilize the local nonprofit educational high school, undergrad and grad, all of these institutions, when they tap into those resources, they not only get diversified talent, early access to talent, because we know that the governments usually cannot compete with private when those talents are at the job market. So being able to access to that talent early on did two things. Maybe we were able to convert them like I was converted to work for the public service. So there's more value than just like earning money. And also significantly increase the problem-solving capacity in a flexible way of my organization. So the pipeline system that we created for my department has gained national recognition. As a result of it, now it's being implemented citywide, so other agencies can actually do what we did, and then we hand it off to the Human Resources Department, which I would be also looking forward to implement if I'm given the opportunity. We also understand the importance of employee engagement. So we instituted Q12 industry-specific employee engagement surveys to understand where some of the people are not engaged or what we can do in different levels. And me and my team is very successful and geeky about analyzing and collecting data. So we were able to really find certain push points to change the canvas. We also created a Lead to Succeed program and a copy program from a Google Bungee, where we allowed our people within our organization to be able to work in other parts of the organization to see if they have any interest in working in one side. If you're working in an HR, you never worked in accounting, maybe spend a day or two in accounting to see there's maybe something for you. And if you did actually like to work there, we guaranteed the training and the resources for them to be able to get the skills and the tool sets to be able to survive in that. So we supported that initiative as well. Lead to Succeed program was mainly designed for our young leaders. And when I say young, I didn't mean in terms of age, but young in the government. So there's various ages that are working new to the government, give them the ability to work together and then do capstone projects within the organization so that they get exposure to the various parts of the organization and also the leadership. Leadership people will know this person is doing a good job. Maybe their ability to hire and promote within increased. Therefore, the employee engagement also increased with that. So I'm just going to take a minute to stop and see if you have any questions, or do you want me to continue about the background, because I can
Well, I
keep
think we
going
can
on
weave it all in here. We have I have a set of questions, and then we'll hear from my colleagues.
Okay.
You've described quite a bit of your background and what you've done so far. But what do you believe is the key role of the Office of Human Resources, and how, as director, will you advance that objective?
Well, the key role of the office is to recruit, train, and develop the workforce departments need to achieve their goals. That's number one. And I do have a little bit of an understanding for working in DGS, also an internal service agency that is providing services for other agencies to do their job. If we don't put the cars out, the police cannot fight crime, we cannot put out fires. So if we don't bring the facilities to good conditions, we cannot service our constituents and citizens. So I understand the centralized services office's role is to really make other agencies do their job better. Specifically for the HR, where we need to do is really recruit the best talent, train them, retain them, and develop the workforce, and not only for the legacy work, but get us ready for the future work.
Great. Tell us about your experience ensuring compliance with and knowledge of federal, state, and local labor laws.
Well, as an executive and a member of the leadership within the city of Baltimore, we were frequently and heavily trained on federal, state, and local laws to be able to do our job better. One thing that was very important for the CFO role is to work with my HR team to make sure that we always have appropriate resources available within our budget to make sure those types of trainings are done frequently, on time, and kept up to date. Providing harassment and discrimination training to workforce help reduce the risk of lawsuits, potentially saving the agency substantial investments of time and money. And I'm a big believer of fail-safe environments where we can eliminate the mistake at the first time before it happens. And that could happen by really training the entire workforce, not the managers, not the supervisors, not the HR people, but the people that are actually doing the job. If they do understand their limitations, the law very well, then we would eventually will have to deal with less. So in my experience, as a leadership senior staff member of the organization, worked on those initiatives to make sure that they're in place.
Departments and job applicants have faced challenges since the implementation of our current hiring system. What thoughts do you have on reducing the time it takes to complete a recruitment form, preparing the vacancy announcement through the final hiring of qualified candidates? How would you use technology to manage and advance change?
Well, this question that I have to be really careful because I have a lot of opinions, but I want to keep those opinions to City of Baltimore, but I can assume some of the problems that I faced as an agency executive will be also here as well. But what I've done so far, Andrew and Karen has shared with me some of the studies and the reports have done in this regard, and I've read the findings of the Talent Acquisition and Development Initiative report. Very first thing that I would do, how is the implementation going? What worked and what didn't? Current state with the future state of the recommendations, where are some of the gaps? I understand the gap analysis. I would like to challenge the value proposition of the study because I understand it is an important metric to have the average time it takes to hire, it needs to be lower. But in my time for performance management and business improvement, I've seen day in, day out, it's so easy to lose focus if you just put your entire effort into one metric. I'm not saying that that number shouldn't be reduced, but what we cannot forget about is the ultimate goal, which is making the best possible hire. So what I would do first to really understand each agency's vision and mission and their connections to the county's overall priorities, which I've been living in that world because when I hired, it was the first or the second year of the outcome budgeting for the city, so I understand the central part of that initiative as well as implementation from two different agencies as an executive. So agency's mission will need to be supported by the human capital, and if we don't understand as an agency, we won't be able to support them at the level that they need. Understanding their needs and creating partnership with these agencies, and we had a conversation with Mr. Albornoz, and I told him that I would be stealing his recommendation because creating mini strategies, getting away from the one-size-fits-all with the departments would be my way to really reduce the time it takes to hire by training the front line, training the HR arm in the agencies as well as our people. In terms of data and how I use the technology, there is a lot of technology out there that could be deployed, and a couple of the instances people are using right now, asynchronous video interviews that people can answer their questions and then we can review them a lot faster. I'm not saying just these has to be implementations, but I've been really thinking about how we can be more effective. And I also would like to do something that I've done in my agency that reduce the paper dependency. The amount of paper that we waste during the interview processes is enormous. So I would like to be able to get onto that one. I would like to create a repository of questions that other agencies can pull. If there is not, I would like to look at when was the last time the position description is done. And also analyze the average time to hire. One metric right now, we say this takes 94 days. Don't quote me on the exact numbers. It takes to hire. But I understand that we have various different types of jobs. And what I don't know, is it the same across the board? Is every job type takes the same way? Is one agency doing a little better than the other agency? If certain types of jobs are getting onboarded a lot faster. So being able to analyze the data in that fashion will allow me to understand where the pressure points are and then do tailored specific action items to work with those agencies and maybe those types of positions.
The council will soon begin work on developing racial equity and social justice policy legislation. What specific experience do you have implementing and overseeing workforce diversity and equity programs?
Thank you. I would like to first of all tell you that personally, I am very happy the council is taking and the county is taking this direction. And I do agree with you, Madam Council Member, that it shouldn't be the policy, but it should be the legislation. So every other administration hereafter would have to abide by it. Similar vein, the city of Baltimore has already ventured out into the racial equity and social justice. We call it an equity assessment program. And we as agencies have already started working on identifying how we fit. It's in the very front end of the projects. And then the way that we fit as an agency, we understand that the way that we direct our capital projects, we need to see if we have been equitable or not. And then add that equity into whatever we're going to develop. Because we as DGS, I'm sure in here, recreation and parks, all of the city facilities where we do the upgrades and then renovations and rehabs, we need to put the equity lens. It's extremely important to have a vision for racial equity and social justice, and it's coming from a Turkish immigrant, obviously. I can definitely value that. It had to be at the fabric of every decision-making that the government does, and then we need to lead by example. So if the largest group in the governing body does it, everybody thereafter need to follow it. But I do have one specific example that how in my organization that we helped with the racial equity and social justice is what I mentioned about the pipeline program to the ecosystem. There are two really great organizations located in Baltimore. One is a Baltimore Course, and the other one is Code in the Schools. Both of these organizations, they're nonprofit organizations, and their mission is to build equitable pipelines into city leadership, apply an equity lens to current policies and practices across the social impact sector, and drive resources to historically disinvested leaders and organizations to evolve the profile of the institutional leadership. Once we saw that, we realized that was a gold mine. We can really work with them to bring a lot of talent, which is being harvested and collected, and then without a burden to us. They're doing all of the work, all of the outreach, all of the training, and getting these people. And then as a city, if we're not going to support them, who is going to? So we, as the agency, are the first ones to tap into that resource and created that pipeline. And that's what made it the program so successful and recognized, and then now it's brought up to the city level.
Great. How will you work to recruit employees who represent the county's diversified demographics, including those with diversified language and cultural competencies, different ages and generational perspectives, and those with physical or other disabilities?
Montgomery County is a home to an extremely diverse population. And as a Turkish immigrant, I personally recognize the importance of expanding opportunities to diversified demographics and communities. I've been really blessed to be able to navigate through the system, got hired, got good education, and I was able to go through the ranks. But what I saw, the importance of a diversified team, was exacerbated when I joined Andrew's team. Andrew had 4 analysts that retired, and then 4 new not young, but new analysts, because I was quite older than the other ones. But what happened was 4 of us started, and then there were a couple others in there. You could see it was a very diverse demographics in terms of race, ethnicity, and age, and different backgrounds. I can tell now that that team, what we call the BBMR team, was very successful in doing things under Andrew's vision. And when I thought to myself, when I'm given the opportunity to form my own teams, I would replicate that effort. I would like to have a diversified background of talent, because I don't want to be able to hire same type of people. Therefore, I don't provide coverage to what I need to do. So bringing different talents, different types of backgrounds, different type of education, professional backgrounds, and age and demographics is key to success. And to be honest with you, creation of the pipeline of the local ecosystem to schools and nonprofits was very successful for me to do that in a flexible, fast way. Kind of a way around the antiquated HR processes. So I know this is televised. Hopefully, the City of Baltimore is not watching. But at least it was well received and accepted. But what I need to also emphasize is we have to train our people. that are the managers, the recruiters, the executive leader, to the nuances of different backgrounds, different cultures, different demographic, different age groups. Now we're working across maybe 4 different divisions: Zennials, Millennials, Gen Xers, Baby Boomers. They're all working together. And if we do not understand the nuances of these, just the generational nuances or ethnic nuances, racial differences, we won't be able to really promote where we need to promote. We won't be able to recruit where we need to recruit. And also, I'm talking about very specifics of training our people during interviews to be able to understand the cues and the differences between because I'm a very loud, talkative person, but there are cultures that are just like more silent, and then they won't challenge the authority. We will need to understand and train so that we don't leave talent behind, and then people will not feel like a county or a city government is not open and a welcoming place for them. So training would be very important for me to be able to get into the weeds, get everybody trained constantly with the changing fabric. But also, I would like to say, the pipeline only worked because there were people in high schools and the colleges that we were tapping into. I volunteer my time as a board member of a nonprofit organization. I am the vice president right now. It is called Chesapeake Language Project, and its mission is solely we're working to empower the immigrant community by trying to increase educational opportunities for those families. So I also put my own time into that type of work to make sure, just like when, as a professional, I need to go to these institutions and educational components or populations, they have a better chance to fight and then be recognized.
Thank you. Are there any conflicts of interest of which we should be aware?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. All right, so now we'll engage in a conversation. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Attila, it's good to see you in person. We've had numerous conversations on the phone, and I appreciate those conversations. I do want to commend and acknowledge the administration's understanding that the Office of Human Resources is a very high priority, and the link to be able to address so many issues across the entire county in a very complex government system. And I appreciate your willingness to think outside the box, because we do need some fairly significant change management approaches. I want to acknowledge Ms. Plachinsky and the incredible staff of the Office of Human Resources. They are often overwhelmed just by the sheer volume and scope of the personnel and the hiring and the challenges that come on an everyday basis, legally, regulatory, and policy-wise. And so they need some help on a lot of different levels, and I have appreciated our conversations. And I do want to acknowledge that I had some significant reservations when I first saw your resume, Mr. Attila. The obvious thing that sticks out is you don't have any direct human resource management experience or an educational background in this space. And so I appreciate the response to the additional questions that I posed, and I feel very comfortable with those responses that the administration is taking very seriously, surrounding you with the support that you will need to be effective and to be able to move forward. Because as the former director of a large department with 3,000 employees, there was not a month that went by that I did not call the director of the Office of Human Resources requesting that they assist with some very complex and deep-rooted personnel issue. And what I found very often was that we would get different pieces of advice from within the Office of Human Resources, and so it was up to the director to sort through these complex issues and provide sound guidance and advice to minimize exposure, but also help facilitate those personnel issues that can slow down any organization, public, private, or nonprofit. So I do think that I just want to reinforce how important it will be, particularly for the vacant positions that we have within OHR at the management level, that we do have people who have extensive human resource experience so that Mr. Attila has the support that he will need to address those complex issues. And I also appreciate your willingness to look at departments from an individual lens and not a one-size-fits-all, because there are very unique complexities to every department. Recreation had both part-time and seasonal employees and additional full-time merit. And so I think that's going to be really important. I did have a few questions just to get further for clarification. There will be inevitable personnel dispute, and so we've obviously moved forward with a new position, which my colleagues and I have supported. I do have a question. This may be for you, Mr. Klein, but when there is inevitable conflict in terms of a personnel issue that involves a department, who will be the lead on that? Who will help sort through and make a recommendation to you and ultimately the department on how to sort through that when it involves our brothers and sisters in labor?
Thank you for the question. And certainly, this may not be the answer you want to hear, but it will depend on the issue. We have a chief labor relations officer whose job is to handle grievances, things having to do with our collective bargaining agreements. There are other types of conflict in the workplace, harassment, workplace violence, those kind of discrimination, those kinds of issues. Those will be handled by the Office of Human Resources. And those two, this isn't going to work unless the OHR director and the chief labor relations officer aren't working hand in hand and looking at these issues and determining, okay, where does this fall? How do we best address this? They have to work, day by day, coordinating on those issues.
Acknowledging you're absolutely right, it will be a case-by-case basis. I think some formal notification to departments on who to go to for what will be important because that sort of clarity will be paramount to addressing often very difficult situations.
I agree.
Okay. We've recently invested in the last 4 years in some software that was supposed to help expedite and make things easier for departments. I would argue that it has done the opposite. And so I know from a change management perspective, we will be looking at the technology tools that we currently have in place, but could we talk a little bit about the administration's approach to that, acknowledging that I don't want to throw good money after bad here, and the openness of looking at new systems or even the development of one of our own that addresses some of the needs of departments in real time and managers in real time.
I agree with you, Mr. Councilman. I think I will have the unique opportunity and a brief period of time to be able to question what has done and if it worked or not, and being able to understanding our budgets and limitations, working with Andrew closely to make recommendations and not taking anything off the table to start with. I don't want to come in with bias, and I don't want to feel like I'm boxed in to the current solution, but I don't want to think that the solution only resides outside with throwing more money at it, and then usually that may not be the case. So one of the very first things that I would like to do, and I'm good at understanding how the systems work and integrate together and where the weaknesses are, and see if we can obviously find small improvements around the margins that could make large impacts would be the case. But if it's a dead horse, then we're gonna have to rethink. But I think it would be premature for me to right now to make any recommendations. But my goal is to be able to, in the first 30 to 60 days, to really understand what has happened, what's working, what's next, and also really bring the perspective from the user standpoint, not from our end, because most of the work, as I understand, also being done at the agency level. So their interactions, is it a training issue? Is the system, the way how to use it is not understood well? So those are the things that I would look at first and create maybe solutions around it. Maybe add other solutions to it or develop in-house solutions to it.
I appreciate that, and I think Ash is going to be helpful. I think you guys are going to make a good team in that regard, looking at different technology solutions that are out there. Comment and then a question. So as a matter of survival for the last 10 years, many of the central office functions of county government, that includes human resources, technology services, and even general services, by virtue of survival, has been pushed out to departments who have not been in a position to really be able to absorb that additional work and not really having the expertise to be able to handle that pushing out of those assignments. As a general philosophy, and this could again be a question for you, Mr. Klein, has the administration looked into that general philosophy? Do you have plans on bringing some of that back in a more centralized fashion, or is there going to be a hybrid approach to this moving forward?
We have been doing some thinking about that. For example, looking at some of our smaller units and whether a shared services model makes more sense than the current model. I know, Berke and I have talked about human resources, and it's something I want him to look at is, how well is this working? What's being done centrally? What's out in the departments? Because he's not going to be able to have success if he's leading his OHR staff in a direction but doesn't have the department HR professionals on board and making sure that everyone's working collaboratively and in the same direction. So I don't have a answer or solution on that. Very well aware of the issue.
Great. Appreciate the awareness of the issue and look forward to ongoing conversations on how we plan to address it. Just a couple of very specific recommendations and then follow up with one final comment. Often the gateway to hiring is people who've been asked to volunteer within a department to review resumes and serve on interview panels, which is on top of their already very busy schedules and mounting work. And so it really is catch as catch can. And while there is training offered by the county to individual personnel to be able to serve on a hiring panel, I can tell you that that training could use an update. And I would also say that I believe there's an opportunity, particularly within the racial equity lens, for us to be much more intentional about making sure the hiring panelists that are volunteering do reflect the diversities of the communities that we're trying to serve. So as an example, if somebody is applying and goes through an interview that may have an accent, having people who are on the interview panel who have some personal experience with that, either directly or indirectly, can help minimize some of those sometimes unintended biases that we have as human beings. And so I think that there's some low-hanging fruit there that I think the Office of Human Resources can take the lead on and really be a model for the entire county government moving forward. And so as you look at the thousands of projects that you're going to want to get off the ground and policies that you'll want to implement, I would start with some of those basic and core functions that I think will produce some greater dividends moving forward and present more opportunities for to have a county government that reflects the diversity of our communities. Final comment, and this will not come as a surprise, Mr. Klein, we discussed this on the phone, but to appease some of my reservations, I appreciate the administration's willingness to administer a survey as soon as possible prior to Mr. Attila's commencement, assuming we do support his nomination, so that we can benchmark both his and the Office of Human Resources progress. I really want to thank my colleague, Council President Navarro, and also Chair of our Government Operations Committee, as well as the conversations I've had with my colleagues around this who agree that we probably should do this anyways, but to benchmark where we are from a customer service standpoint, a personnel management standpoint, a technology standpoint, check back in through the Government Operations Committee in about 6 months, and then again in a year to track Mr. Attila's success, hopefully, and then we will go from there. So that is important to me, and if I can get you on the record committing to that survey, I'd feel a lot better about this.
Yes, absolutely, and it's in the works. I do want to mention that the county government does an annual internal service survey, and I will say OHR, its rankings have been disappointing. That's one of the reasons why we were looking for a new direction. This survey will be more in depth and like you said, give us a really solid baseline to start with, and then we move forward with new initiatives and see how they are working, both based on the survey and in other ways.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you. I also would like to say that as a new leader coming in, assuming that I get the job, having a survey and telling me where I need to work with is going to be an extremely valuable tool for me.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you to Councilmember Albornoz, who certainly knows what it's like to work in county government and lead a department and deal with OHR on a daily basis, and knows the tremendous folks who work in OHR and some of the challenges that we face in OHR. And I associate myself with many of his observations and comments, and I shared some of those same concerns. And I certainly appreciate the interest in looking for change and wanting to improve processes that need improvement, and needing to think outside the box in order to do that. If we keep doing things the same way we've always done them, then we keep heading in the same direction. And if we're not heading in the direction we want to be, then that's probably not the right approach. And I think when it comes to personnel, I mean, our greatest talent, our greatest asset in Montgomery County is our talent. And that's true of the county as a whole, and it's certainly true in county government. 81% of our budget is dedicated to our people. And so getting this right, I think, just about supersedes anything else. We can't solve any of the challenges we face, provide any of the services that our residents rely on. We can't make the changes that the administration, the county executive, and you, Mr. Klein, have talked about doing unless we get the people right, and we can't get the people right unless we get the processes to get the people right. And so I appreciate that. I did have many of the concerns that Councilmember Albornoz raised. I appreciate the time that you've taken to come and meet and answer some of those questions, the background information that you've provided, and as well as Ms. Kassiri, who's provided some information. I just wanted to see if you could answer, publicly some of the things that you've answered privately, largely on the fact that, I see HR as having two main functions, as we talked about privately. There's the process and administrative side, and obviously you have a lot of background in process management and change management. But then the second side, which is probably where a lot of the fires come from and where most of the risk comes from, is on the legal and regulatory side. And that's where the department heads and others are utilizing OHR, or at least should be utilizing OHR, to make sure that they're not getting themselves into trouble or doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and are aware of what they're supposed to be doing. And could you speak a little bit about how you foresee those two roles? And we talked a lot so far today about process, and obviously that's why Mr. Klein is bringing you in. But I'd love to hear how you envision the day-to-day of putting out the fires and dealing with what I see as a core function of what the office will be handling on a daily basis.
Thank you for your question, of course. And I see the law, rules and regulation side and business process side going hand in hand. And I'll explain my process of thinking it through. So, Councilman Albornoz mentioned that there was not a day going by or a month without having an issue that they relied on some sort of a guidance from the OHR, and most of the times some of those guidance were conflicted, so somebody at the top had to chime in. Without knowing anything about any organization, I can tell you as a business process improvement professional, the system is designed to fail if it's operating that way. Because it's a pyramid approach that one person sitting at the top knowing all the answers, and then we will always create chokeholds. We will have conflicting informations. So what I would like to understand first off would be, in my team, what kind of capabilities that we have, and I'm being provided with a great support team internally in the agency and externally from the law department and in the CAO's office as dealing with these complex issues that I may personally not have experience over. However, I live in a similar world as a chief financial officer. I have mentioned this to you before. I run the agency's budgets, the grants, a lot of financial statements needs to be produced, revenue bond sales that I don't have much information on, and what I have to do is for those rules and regulations and generally accepted accounting principles, I have to work very closely with the experts in those subject matters, the CPAs and then the accountants. So that would be the approach that I would take. I would necessarily put together a strong leadership team that covers the blind spots that I have. Councilman Albornoz and I, we mentioned about hiring for those positions and then maybe looking into best management practices in private, but I would like to be very careful and cautious not to overlook the current potential within the organization. So although I would need to provide a team that works cohesively right away, I would like to be very careful not to jump right ahead and then really send a wrong message. What I'm trying to signal for the county is overlook the potential powers within the agency. One of the things that just like, again, business process and then this type goes hand in hand together, I would like to understand from a data standpoint, cataloging of what types of questions that are coming, what kind of conflicting information is coming in, and if we're set up to be able to consume the information, the question that comes in, assigning and triaging to the right buckets where it needs to go, and then are we providing the right support? We had a similar situation in DGS where our customers were extremely unhappy with our customer service because when they called and reported a problem, it would take so many days for us to be able to even figure out the problem. They were saying just like X, Y, and Z is not working, and we would send an electrician then come back and sends a mechanic then sends a plumber, and then by the time we really figured out what the problem is, the customer was already frustrated. And quickly tweaking the ability to determine and explain the problem is, and then most of the times the problem is just like somebody's working in your office, you're saying my AC is not working, that's the person who is actually communicating with the system, putting the work order, saying this is not working. So what we were getting as an information, trying to solve on the DGS side, was the lead cause of the problem that we were not sending the right message at the first place or not being able to address that right away, was where and how we were collecting the information. So some of these problems, I can tell you, if we do the appropriate training at the boots on the ground workforce level, I am sure that we will be able to, number one, eliminate the number of questions that may need OHR's direction. Because why not get the powers of the decentralized work right now? I'm not saying that's the best way, but if it's already decentralized, that means we have people in the agencies that should be empowered, trained, and put in situations where it's happening to be able to make the call and understand what types of things they cannot do the judgment call and rely on us. And why is that? Is it because we have not giving them the power to do it? Most of the time that's the case. They don't feel empowered to be able to do the call, or they feel like they will be punished, so they let the call go to the centralized office. Well, let them decide it. I mean, that happens to me in the financial world as well. I have to make a lot of financial judgment calls, but we don't have a system that every time I need to make a call, I have to go to the director of finance. It works well when you train your fiscal people and accounting people on the principles and rules and how it works, then you do eliminate the number of touch points that goes out. Understanding those from a business standpoint and putting together a team of experts that support me with the right hiring, that's the way I would be dealing with the two aspects that you had mentioned.
I appreciate that. And obviously, change is important. I think change is critical to keeping up, but change also comes with challenges and making sure that you're surrounded by those who have the skills and background in this particular highly regulated, highly legally focused field, I think is really important. To Councilmember Albernoz's point also about procurement, and some synergies there and the centralization, decentralization of the support agencies, I think with procurement, with OHR, and with information technology, there is an opportunity, I think, perhaps for efficiencies to look at what should be centralized, what should be decentralized in a way to improve processes. And so I think there will be some synergies there and some opportunities there, and look forward to hearing back for you on that. And I want to, particularly on procurement and OHR, which are both highly regulated, there's a tendency, I think, in governments for them to become kind of arms of the county attorney, where they're just there to protect from legal trouble. And we miss out on the proactive opportunities to make the government function better, which is really what they should be doing first, and secondarily to provide the support to make sure that we're not getting ourselves into trouble, playing more offense than defense. And so, I think that there's an opportunity with you in this role perhaps to really focus in on that and be, play more offense in terms of improving processes, making the system work better. Just quickly before I give up my time, the survey that was mentioned, if we could include on that the vacancies and the time of the vacancies. I think that to your point, I think there's way too much focus on how long it takes to hire somebody. We all know it takes too long. The process doesn't work. We need to fix that process. But I think the real impact on county services and on county taxpayers is how many vacancies do we have, how often, and how, what length of time are those vacancies open for? Because then we have somebody missing in some role, and that's what puts the strain on the workforce. That's what limits the ability for residents to receive services. And I would hope that as you look at that survey, that be a key data point that you look at as we fix it. And just as much as we want to onboard people quicker, we want to recruit people quicker, we should be regularly assessing what the vacancies are and determining how to improve that. And if there are agencies that aren't filling those vacancies, figuring out why. And usually there are reasons for why.
Just to add one thing, and I want to emphasize the metric and performance measurement. The similar way in where we did the gain sharing in the city of Baltimore, which is a collaborative agreement between the management and employees and then the labor partners, where we empower our frontline people to do better, more efficient, and in return, if they do provide efficiencies and savings, a portion of that would be shared back with them. This was the very first one done in the city, have been nationally recognized. We saved over $1 million and shared back $500,000. But one thing that was very important, we had to couple the performance with the quality, and then we made sure that there is no bonus or performance or improvement if you let the quality go down. When I say quality, the most important thing about it, why we do provide fleet services, to make the fleet available for our agencies to do the work. So we have an availability metric that we need to meet on a daily basis, not just a percentage, but number of certain types of assets that needs to be on the ground every day. So if we solely focus on really saving, meaning taking some of the work and then working on it rather than sending it to a vendor by cutting costs, we may compromise the quality of our services and then let the availability go down. And that will be the same metric type of process management attitude that I would bring, not solely focus on reducing the average time to take to hire, and not to compromise. As I said, the ultimate goal is to hire the best possible employee to the job, because Councilman Friedson mentioned our most important asset is our people, talent, and if we don't bring them, we won't be able to do the business process improvements and everything else thereafter.
Thank you. Councilmember Joando.
Thank you, Council President, and Mr. Attila, good to see you again.
To see you as well.
Enjoyed our meeting, and I think I shared with you that I like the idea of out-of-the-box thinking, and as a general premise. And I think, this, in many ways, our county government does need to evaluate how and what it's doing and why it's been doing it, and look at things in a critical way. But at the same time, we need to, as we're focused on change and process improvement and change management, you need to understand the process that's in place. And so you're going to have, as my colleagues have shared, you're going to have a learning curve there, but one that I know you understand that you have, which is, you can't fix something if you don't.
I do.
Okay, right, yeah. If you can't learn if you don't think you need to learn. So I appreciate that, and I really appreciate Councilman Rabanaz's survey. I think that'll be helpful to all of us as we're going along the route in this area more than maybe any other in the HR world. I think a wholesale review, and there's been work and reports done on this, on what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and what needs to change is required. And I think you'll be very good at that. But again,
thank you.
You need to do it with having the people around you that know why, what the reasoning is, and know the very technical, at sometimes, and long-standing HR, the business of HR, so to speak. So I appreciate that, and I just want to emphasize that that's important. And I would love to, as part of, it doesn't have to be in the survey, but I think when you come back, and I'll try to sit in, as you're going through in a methodical way of this change management process. Keep us up to date. If there's questions, if there's things that you think we need to know, you don't have to wait 6 months, right? I mean, this.
Oh, you're definitely right. And I'm seeing you as our customers as well, because you are also hiring and then dealing with OHR. So when I say my customers and working with them, I was also including the council.
I appreciate being a customer. And with libraries in particular, Councilmember Friedson mentioned this, the vacancy rate. I'm in the middle of a library tour, and I hear about it at every single library, that they just cannot provide the level of service and meet the need of our diverse population who comes to the library for many things other than books, with the level of vacancies that they have, for example. So it's just one example of the many things that we need to look at. So I look forward to supporting you. I look forward to hearing back from you and staying in touch with you, and appreciated our conversation.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you very much. I share the comments from my colleagues about the need for a really strong HR operation and for depth in the department. And I like the inventiveness to say we have many challenges. One of the challenges we need to take on is how to improve our internal strategy. So the fact that you're going to focus on lean decision making, I think, is intriguing. I just want to, put a reminder out there. The executive has talked a lot about reinventing how we do to do more with less, to reduce headcount, to work with the union leadership to, reduce headcount while not producing services provided to the community. That's a difficult undertaking, and it will require a lot of leadership from HR. I think a big voice at the table, working with the unions, working with the workforce, not having it become a demoralizing, dynamic. I think we've all probably been in organizations that have a culture of reorganization, layoff. It reduces morale, and you get less out of the workforce. So, it's going to be hopefully a big part of your task is to help us figure out how we are going to meet the challenge of providing to a growing population without having a growing workforce in the county, because we can't frankly afford to continue to grow the workforce at the pace that it's been growing in the last few years. Did you have any comment on that topic?
Yes, I do. I am very familiar with the concept where I'm working with Andrew and for Andrew while he was the budget director in the city of Baltimore under the outcome budgeting. Our goal is to find efficiencies in our agencies. As an analyst working for an agency, or a CFO or a deputy CFO for an agency, was to find efficiencies, do more with less, reduce the headcount by a certain number of headcount. But what I understand very well from that was reduce the headcount is not equal to abolishing positions or laying off people.
Right.
So as you all mentioned, we have a lot of vacancies in our organizations. And through lean, business government, use of automation, understanding the data, working into our strengths, we can, and then we will be able to reduce some of the tasks that is maybe very heavily demanding on labor, and then getting rid of those positions, but not the bodies. It will be the primary goal, because there, from a fiscal standpoint and being a CFO, I do understand the legacy costs of having a position involved, and so if I may, I could give you a good example. When I was running I'm the CFO of the DGS, and when we looked at our rate schedule for our fleet operations, we realized that although we were charging some sort of a blended rate across our different services, we have a truck shop, we have a fire shop, we have a body shop that is providing, and then we do a internal service model where we charge an actual fee for our services. It was painfully clear to us when we did the analysis that the least efficient and the most rate demanding section, and then the easiest job to do, was the body shop. Through managed competition, we know that elimination of the body shop would have saved a lot of time, increased a lot of efficiencies, and saved the rate-paying agencies general funded dollars. But that didn't mean that abolishing those 5 positions, that we are letting 5 mechanics go. we found them other positions within the organization, but we were able to reduce the headcount of the division, reduce the operating dollars, but in return, we were able to do more. So I'm very confident with Andrew's turn the curve thinking. It will institute itself to that way of thinking, and as the head of HR, my job to work very closely with him and then provide any sort of training possibilities to bring everybody up to speed and then give them real-time examples how to think this through, and then provide that type of leadership to our leadership in the department so they can understand what is needed and what it takes and how you can achieve it without necessarily losing service capacity or having to lay off people.
Good. I'm glad to hear you comment about training too. I think career progression is something that we want to be able to offer people as well, and that you ought to be able to move through a variety of different roles. So that's something that also I'm sure can be improved and reinvented. So
well, we will be fighting hard on the training dollars, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Attila, really have enjoyed this exchange. Obviously, as has been stated before, our most precious resources really are human resources. That's what this business is all about. And here in Montgomery County, we have very high expectations of the quality of services, and it's all based and rooted in the quality of our staff. So this is a very important appointment. We will be making our decision on July 23rd. I also do want to formally thank Ms. Plachinsky for everything that she has done in her service to keep things going. But I personally do look forward to you joining in and seeing what you can do to get everything set here for us in the county. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll come back at 1:30 for public hearings. Thank you.